you for your protection. In the midst of those events around us, you are a pillar of stability. Lord, help us to live in such a way our health and your name will be both enriched and glorified. Thank you for those who are going to be part of the seminar tonight. And please, Lord, remember us that we need physical immunity, but also spiritual immunity.
Amen.
We prayed. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor. So we're in December. We're nearing the end of the year, our last health talk for the month, and we're excited to have Dr. David DeRose with us. So Pastor Ovid, he's been championing us, focusing on building our immunity as we look at ways to address COVID. So again, you came highly recommended, Dr. DeRose. Pastor Ovid, would you like to give us a little insight to introduce Dr. DeRose to us?
I think he's going to introduce himself. I know he is very modest, but his books, his credentials, his lifetime ministry and his efforts for public health and also for specific area in our church are overwhelming. I am humble and honored to have him saying yes to our request.
Well, it's my privilege to be with all of you.
So if you can say something about your person, your achievements.
Carmen has already put up an image of my most recent book. It's called The Methuselah Factor.
The Methuselah, yes.
And so we have a special interest in showing how God's health principles are relevant to today. The Methuselah Factor, of course, the title is drawn from the longest lived human on this planet, Methuselah. And the evidence suggests that he had very good blood fluidity. That's the only way he could live that long. So this is a book about how to optimize your blood fluidity. It's readily available on Amazon. The Adventist Book Centers carry it. It's a popular book, but it's nowhere near as popular as a book that we wrote several years ago called 30 Days to Natural Blood Pressure Control. I think I have one of those around here. And this is one of the top-selling books in the world on blood pressure. And it actually has an entire chapter on spiritual health that actually exposes people to things that some of you may have heard of, like the Sabbath and the state of the dead and the sanctuary. And we show how all these things have to do with comprehensive wellness. And I didn't look today, but it's often in the top 10 best-selling books on blood pressure on Amazon. So the Lord's given us this privilege of being able to communicate what some people have called the Seventh-day Adventist health message to lay people, because really people today want better health. And tonight's no exception. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm going to tell you about a free resource that I have for all of you joining tonight. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. I'm going to see if I can share my screen, though, because I want to show you some graphics. So we are going to, let's see here.
Excuse me, Dr. DeRose. If you can mute your phone, we want to mute until there's time for questions, just to have a little more silence in the background.
Okay, so all of you got that message. So can you all see this heading, the sanctuary system?
Yes.
And you can see there my credentials. I'm an MD. I'm a medical doctor. I still do some limited telemedicine work. There's a lot of demand for that today with COVID. People are not wanting to go into doctors' waiting rooms. I also have a master's degree in public health. And some of you know I also have a master's degree in pastoral ministry. And so I have the privilege of also pastoring one of the churches in the Indiana Conference in Fort Wayne. So that's been a privilege for me over the last year and a half or so. So tonight, though, we want to look at the sanctuary system and health. And I just don't really need to remind you because it's in the headlines. Still drawing front page headlines is COVID-19. You see these things coming out. about, the latest on vaccines and, death records hitting daily highs. I mean, we're just bombarded by this information. But it's true, much of the public attention is turned to vaccination. However, there's still much research going on about new therapies and really what we can do to keep well, what we can do to increase our chances of surviving COVID and other infectious diseases is really, I think, the most important topic. And I'm really glad to hear that your pastor, Pastor Ovid, has been, championing this, what you can do for your own immune system, how you can keep healthy. So that's really where we want to focus our attention today. And specifically, what I'd like to draw your attention to is something that a lot of people find surprising. And that's asking this question: might the Bible have answers when it comes to dealing with the current pandemic? And specifically, could insights into the Bible's sanctuary system actually hold one of the keys? Now, a lot of even Seventh-day Adventists say, well, this sounds like a peculiar question to ask. But I think you'll see that it really is a fascinating topic. Many of you know the background of the sanctuary. It really takes us all the way back to the very beginning, because God has always wanted to physically be present with his creation. It was true in the Garden of Eden, and it's true as the Bible closes. You read the last couple chapters of the Bible, Revelation 21 and 22, and you'll see that God is physically present with creation. You say, okay, well, interesting enough, what does all that have to do with health? Well, here's what's interesting to me. It's not just at the beginning and the ending of the Bible that God showed that he wanted to be with his creation. It's also in the heart of Revelation. There in Exodus 25:8, you read those famous words. God said, let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. And I'd like to suggest to you that the sanctuary was not only showing people how they could be right with God, how they could be in fellowship with him, but it illustrated God's concern for his people, for their whole person health. And the sanctuary service, in a sense, really became obsolete when Jesus came as the living sanctuary. Some people don't realize that in John 1:14, when it says Jesus dwelt among us, a very literal translation of that is Jesus tabernacled among us, or he set up his tabernacle or his sanctuary among us. So really the whole sanctuary service is about God's concern for his people and their whole person health. Now you say, okay, well, straightforward enough, but how does that all bring us to where we're at today? It brings us to where we're at today because I believe there's at least 9 immune boosting principles that are found in all of these contexts, whether you look at creation, whether you look at the earth made new, whether you look at the sanctuary service. If we were to take the time, I could show you that all of these 9 elements are found in each of these settings. And I want you to see it tonight because I think it's especially powerful. Now, we have a relatively short time tonight. I know this is a focused presentation, so we won't be able to cover this whole approach in detail, but that's why I have a special gift for you. So we're looking actually at the sanctuary as a system of healing, and it's a mnemonic, it's a memory device. And you see it right here, sanctuary. If you want to optimize your immune system, you want to prioritize these 9 things. So we're going to talk about stress management, safety and security, that's the S. We're going to talk about A for activity, N for nutrition. C will draw us to talking about a comprehensive environment. T, thanksgiving. U is for useful work. A is for abstemiousness. You might think of temperance. R is for rest. And Y is for yearning and hope. We're going to look at each of these. At least we'll spend some time with some of them in detail. The others we'll at least touch on. So in this presentation, like I said, we can't cover all 9 in detail, but you can get a paper that I've written on this topic for free, simply by going to my website. So my website is compasshealth.net. And if you do compasshealth.net/sanctuary, it will bring you to this free handout. If you're wanting the full web address, you see it at the bottom, the HTTPS:// www.compasshealth.net/sanctuary. Okay. So whether you have that link, you take a picture and you are able just to put that link right into your browser, or whether you go compasshealth.net/sanctuary, it will bring you to a paper that I've written on this topic. Now, some of you think I'm shortchanging you. You know, I'm a book author, and I have books on Amazon and the Adventist Book Center, and all I'm giving you is a paper. Well, we have a free book for you too. Okay, so this is an ebook. You can get it in print. I think Amazon still sells the print version, and I don't know, they'll charge you probably $5 or $10 for it. We'll give you the ebook free, and you can also get that on my website, and it's compasshealth.net/Ebola. The book was called Evading Ebola. A lot of people say, well, why do we care about Ebola? It's because the book goes through principles of improving your immune system, things you can do to prevent infectious diseases. So a lot of people have picked up this book with the current pandemic, and they're learning helpful pointers, all free to you folks tuning in tonight. By the way, you're fine. It's fine for you to point anyone else to these resources. We just ask you don't copy them and share them. Have people go to the website and get them themselves. That allows us to kind of keep track of the distribution that we're getting from our resources. Okay, so we're not charging anything, but it's nice for us to know. And then these folks actually we can give them other information. We come out with other free gifts, videos, and things. I think you're automatically added to our mailing list when you download our materials. Okay, so let's talk about this mnemonic, this background, and look at some of these different elements together, because I think you're going to find these things interesting. Let's look at the first one, and that is dealing with stress management, safety, and security. Now, I know this sounds kind of strange, because a lot of the stuff that we're hearing today with safety and security, it actually seems to be in conflict with stress management. Have you thought about it? Because no matter how you feel about the public health value of things like, quote, social distancing, travel restrictions, and all, these things have really stressed out the world's population. So in the secular world, safety and security often seem to conflict with stress management. But in the biblical worldview, all of these things come together. I want to point out something for you. Stress, fear, and immunity, they're all linked together. If you don't realize this, if you're getting all stressed out, it is undermining your immune system. So getting all worked up, all stressed, all distressed, these stress hormones, they'll raise your blood sugar, they'll raise your blood pressure, they'll contribute to anxiety, they'll make it more difficult to sleep. So all of these things, very, very important. You want to control stress. And I'd like to suggest to you that the Bible really has the ideal stress management program. If we come to God with our anxieties, we can experience spiritual transformation. God will give us the assurance of His presence, His comfort, and even the medical research shows us that as we come to God, as we experience His stress management, it increases our sense of gratitude, our appreciation, our sense of peace and joy. All of these things happen, and they come spiritually. So the world is really shortchanging the world's citizens when they just try to give secular strategies for stress management. There's a lot of powerful Bible promises about stress management. Psalm 11 is one of the Psalms that I believe that speaks to us about stress management. David wrote these words. He said, "In the Lord I put my trust. How can you say to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? For look, the wicked bend their bow. They make ready their arrow on the string, that they may shoot secretly at the upright in heart. If the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do?" So you read this, and it's like the psalmist is saying, hey, you're saying trust in the Lord. How can I do that? All these bad things are happening around us. And a lot of people feel that way today. But I want you to see how the psalm continues. David says this. He says, "The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids test the sons of men. For the Lord is righteous. He loves righteousness. His countenance beholds the upright." And so the psalmist is saying in so many words, it may look like this earth is a mess. It may look like we're in trouble, but the Lord is still in charge. The Lord's throne is in heaven. He wants us to take courage from that. And when you read this promise on the righteous, I just want to remind you, yes, we all have this infectious, deadly disease of sin, but the Bible promises us not that we merely are sinners, but that God has a remedy. We're justified freely by his grace. We can come to Jesus as our Savior, just as we are. So we have these beautiful promises in the Bible. Now, some of you may know one of my favorite health books of all time. It's called The Ministry of Healing. This is a quote from it. I'd like to read it to you because it ties in these principles that we've been talking about. It says, the Bible shows us God in his high and holy place, not in a state of inactivity, not in silence and solitude, but surrounded by 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of holy beings, all waiting to do his will. So these messengers, through these messengers, he is what? In active communication with every part of his dominion. By his Spirit, he is everywhere present. Through the agency of his Spirit and his angels, he ministers to the children of men. So you can have the assurance today that God is close to you. Above the distractions of the earth, he, that's God the Father, sits enthroned. All things are open to his divine survey. And from his great and calm eternity, he does what? He orders that which his providence sees best. So we can trust the Lord that he's in charge, that no matter how messed up our lives may look, no matter how messed up our work situation, our family, our communities, our churches, God is in charge. And we can have that assurance. The sanctuary, in its broadest context, assures us of this. Well, let's move on and look at some of these other elements because I know our time is limited tonight. We want to look next at activity. And this is a strange one for many people, you know, especially today. We're hearing all these messages about, oh, you know, be careful, don't be around other people. And some people think, well, boy, I just need to stay in my room and not leave my room. But exercise is so important, and outdoor exercise is especially powerful. You know, in the very beginning in Genesis 2, God gave Adam and Eve, even in a sinless world, what? Outdoor useful work. They were to dress the garden. They were to keep it. And in the new earth, we read about it in Isaiah 65, what's going to happen? We're going to be building houses. We'll be planting vineyards. God does not design that we should be in a state of inactivity. And what the medical research shows is just what Jesus demonstrated. Just like, remember, we talked about the sanctuary in the beginning, God dwelling with Adam and Eve, God, in a sense, his sanctuary with men in Revelation 21 and 22, but Jesus making a sanctuary with men. And if you look at Jesus' example, prior to Jesus' ministry, he was very physically active. He was a carpenter. During his ministry, we read about him doing what? Walking miles and miles, very physically active during his ministry. Now, here's what I want you to see. This is from the medical research. Dr. Neiman did this study some years ago about it, but nearly, you see the research here, 2011, so what we're approaching a decade ago when this was published. Very, very interesting study. This time of year, looking at cold symptoms, what Dr. Neiman and his colleagues did, they recruited over 1,000 adults throughout the age span, both women and men. They followed them for 12 weeks during the winter and spring cold and flu season. And what they found is those who seldom exercised had about twice the likelihood of getting sick, getting clinically ill. This has taken on greater significance today because when I used to talk about asymptomatic illness, a lot of people used to kind of furrow their brow and say, what do you mean? And, you know, I tell people, a lot of people get the flu, they never get sick. People say, what are you talking about? Well, we understand this all today because COVID-19, we've seen, like many illnesses, by the way, this is true even of Ebola. When I wrote the book, Evading Ebola, I was sharing how many people, the research showed, had gotten Ebola and never got sick. So this is what we know about virtually all illnesses. Many, many, especially these viral illnesses, you can get infected, you cannot get sick if your immune system's healthy. And one of the things that helps your immune system be healthy is regular physical exercise. So even in the winter, outdoor exercise, very good. you can see here making a big difference. So some of you say, hey, if exercise is good, I'm going to go out for 2 hours, even though I'm, out of shape. I'm going to run a marathon tomorrow. See how many miles I can run in 2 hours. See if I can do the 26 miles. The problem is over-exercise is also bad for your immune system. You don't want to push yourself to exhaustion. They've actually shown this. It actually undermines your immune system. So start gradually, build up. If you have any questions, check with a health professional. This is showing even in athletes, it's looking at natural killer cells, very important for your immune system. If you push yourself, 2 hours of exhaustive exercise, these are highly trained athletes. Their immune system was cut in half, these natural killer cells, and they stayed depressed for over 24 hours. So don't think that overdoing it is good. Don't try to make up for all you haven't done over the last month tomorrow, right? Okay, let's talk about nutrition just a bit. I want to give you just a few highlights here. Of course, in the beginning, God gave Adam and Eve a perfect diet. It was a totally plant diet, only plant products, whole plant foods. That was God's original program in Genesis. And by the way, it's his program in the earth made new. You read about it, there's going to be no death. There's going to be no killing of animals. You get the picture, right? Isaiah 65 makes it very clear. Even the carnivorous animals are going to be vegetarian. So if you're a carnivorous animal today, maybe you should think about getting used to the heavenly program right now. Just something worth considering. Bible history and diet. I want to read this through for you. It's actually in our handout, the free handout that I offered you. If you just joined, you get the free handout by going to my website, compasshealth.net/sanctuary. compasshealth.net/sanctuary. Let's look at this now. Before our planet was tainted by powerful industrial chemicals, and before factory farming introduced unparalleled levels of disease and toxins into livestock, Jesus did use what the Bible called clean animals in the sanctuary system. Similarly, he blessed his disciples and crowds with clean fish. Now, I have many people come to me and they say, Dr. DeRose, well, if Jesus used these things, I'm going to use them too. I just go out and I fish and I eat my fish and I, hunt my wild game. Listen, if that's the best you can do, if you're an indigenous person living out in the wilderness and that's the best source of nutrition, by all means do it. I've been in many places in the world. I haven't told people all over the world they have to be vegetarians, because I've been to places in Africa where people were starving. The best they could do, family has a little hen, they're eating the eggs. Listen, if that's the best they can do to sustain their life, hey, that's the best they can do. If you can do better, well, maybe you should do better. Let me continue. However, Jesus' example also testifies to the special significance of plant foods. Although Jesus was the Lamb of God, what did he do? Think about this. He replaced that imagery, that Passover imagery, by identifying himself as the bread of life. And when he sets up the new Passover service, the communion service, what does he do? We commemorate Jesus' death not with a meal of lamb, but with a Passover meal, a communion service, wholly of plant products, the unleavened bread, the unfermented wine or grape juice. I think it's very interesting, just something worth thinking about. Well, here's the point. During all the wilderness wanderings, if you look at God trying to optimize the health of his people, what did he do? He didn't give them more animal products, except when they complained, and then the results weren't all that good. But he gave them a menu that was entirely free of flesh food. It was in the form of manna, okay? Now, it's true they had their livestock throughout the wilderness wanderings, presumably both to eat and to use for sacrificial purposes, but the only thing God provided was the manna. Just some things for you to consider. Now, with that background, I want to talk about the immune system and diet. This is a fascinating paper. It came out many years ago by a doctor by the name of Steve Provonsha. Dr. Provonsha actually looked at the research literature at what happens when you eat animal products. Now, I can remember as a nutrition student in college, I later ended up teaching nutrition in college to other students, but when I was a student, I remember they were all worried. Oh, don't be a vegetarian. Vegetarian plant foods, they don't have the right mix of amino acids. You need to eat animal flesh, things like eggs, stuff like that, because that's like the protein in your body has a similar amino acid balance. And many people were very worried about this years ago. Well, we now know this is not a concern at all because you get all the amino acids that you could possibly need in plant foods. You don't need to eat them even all at one meal. But here's what Provonsha showed that was fascinating that no one was talking about when I was taking college nutrition as a student. And that is if you eat foods that have an amino acid makeup that looks like similar to human flesh, similar amino acid ratios, what Provonsha actually showed is when you flood those kind of amino acid mixtures into your bloodstream with a meal that includes flesh products, your body thinks its own tissue is breaking down and produces stress hormones. Those stress hormones undermine your immune system. So if you want the best immune system, you want to be eating as much as possible a whole plant food diet. That's really the ideal. And we could talk about many reasons why that's true, not just the work of Dr. Provonsha. There are other lines of evidence as well. Let me just share one of them with you that you might find particularly interesting. Some of you may know now Dr. Roger Schwelt. If you don't know Dr. Schwelt, he's an excellent source on COVID-19. He runs a website called medcram.com. It's definitely worth checking out. Dr. Schwelt, I look at as really one of the leading minds on the prevention and treatment of COVID-19. He's active in the intensive care units treating people with COVID-19, but he's a Bible-believing Christian and actually is a Seventh-day Adventist, and he believes the principles that God's given to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Dr. Schwelt, one of the things he has recommended is zinc. And there's a direct inhibition of zinc on the coronavirus. A lot of people say, well, where do you get zinc? Some of the best natural sources of zinc are from beans and seeds. That is, if you want to raise zinc levels without raising inflammation. Yes, you can get zinc in animal products, but remember, they're going to raise those stress hormones, worsen inflammation. If you say, well, I'm not sure I'm getting enough zinc, you can take a zinc supplement. I recommend only 25 milligrams a day. Don't take huge amounts of zinc over a long period because it can cause problems. Okay, let's talk a little bit about environment. I know our time is limited. I'll try to take some more high points here for maybe 10 minutes. Is that okay with the organizers and then take your questions? Are we good?
Yes, you're good. You're good.
Okay. So let's talk about comprehensive environment. I want to look at a few things with you. Let's first talk about sunshine. This is really important. I wrote this in my book, Evading Ebola. I said it would be fascinating and perhaps therapeutically revolutionary to check blood levels of 25-OH vitamin D, the compound accurately reflecting body vitamin D stores in those suffering from Ebola. And we were suggesting back then, this was 6-7 years ago during the Ebola pandemic, that vitamin D might be one of the things that would protect from the ravages of that viral illness. Well, it's definitely been confirmed with COVID-19 that vitamin D is very important. We've known about it for years, how it could help with colds and flu. And there's very good research now that vitamin D is something that can decrease your risk of having serious COVID-19 infection. Actually, just received a call today from someone asking about vitamin D, and I was talking with them. They said, well, how much should we take? We recommend that if you're not monitoring your levels, safe range seems to be in the range of 5,000 international units a day. Now, it's true, if you've got a good level, you may only need 2,000 international units a day to keep it up. But most people that we check are deficient in vitamin D if they're not taking a supplement. In fact, I've got a physician friend who says every patient he sees, if they're not taking a vitamin D supplement and they've not had their level checked, they are vitamin D deficient until proven otherwise. So either get your level checked or make sure you're taking 5,000 international units a day. And this is very important for optimal immune functioning. And really, we're not dependent on all these high-tech drugs, even vaccines necessarily. I'm not saying there isn't a place for any of these things, but I'm simply saying many of us with simple lifestyle factors can make all the difference, okay? Now, here's something else interesting in the environment. I learned this from a physician colleague many years ago. He found that many of his patients were getting sick in the winter, and he attributed it to dryness of their respiratory lining, especially in drier parts of the country. When the weather gets colder, the air contains less moisture. Your skin can crack. You could have nosebleeds, things like that. If that's happening, it's likely your respiratory tract is becoming really less than optimally hydrated. He found that he could have his patients use a very simple and safe dehumidifier. Now, excuse me, humidifier, not dehumidifier. We're trying to put moisture in the air, not take it out. A humidifier. Now, you can buy these devices, but some of the devices you buy, they're prone to get mold in them and other things, and they can actually be a source of problems. But I've never seen anyone have any problem with mold by using a crockpot. That's right. He had his patients just bring their crockpot into their bedroom at night, put plenty of water in it, put it on low heat, and it just acts as a natural vaporizer. Inexpensive. You can use it during the day to cook your beans, okay? So this is really interesting because it seems to make your respiratory lining healthier. And this is important for what we call non-specific immunity, just strengthening your defenses against any kind of a pathogen. Well, we could speak about Thanksgiving. There's a lot of research speaking of the benefits of gratitude. We don't have time to touch on that tonight. There is material in the free handout. Useful work. In talking about activity, if you have access to doing things outdoors that are useful and practical, this gives you additional stress management benefits. But we want to talk about abstemiousness, things that we should be avoiding or things that we should be using that are good in moderation. These caffeinated beverages are not good even in moderation. They ramp up the stress system. And remember, we've seen that as you ramp up those stress hormones, it decreases immune functioning. So caffeine is something you should be avoiding if you're serious about optimal immune functioning. Another thing you want to avoid is alcohol. Alcohol is really bad for the immune system. It internally gives you no protection from the coronavirus. I know you've heard of people, drinking things to try to sterilize their respiratory tract. This is not going to go in your respiratory tract. If it did, you'd be in real trouble. But there's evidence on multiple grounds that alcohol suppresses your immune system. It is just bad stuff. Now, many of you have heard, quote, medical scientists talking about how good alcohol is for you. This is just not factual. If you look at it comprehensively, the facts are beverage alcohol is associated with many of America's leading conditions, from obesity to cancer to high blood pressure. That's right. Even moderate levels of drinking significantly increase the risk of a number of cancers as well as high blood pressure. Individuals eating plenty of plant products, they don't get any benefit at all from moderate drinking. It's true, there are some good things in alcoholic beverages. I know some of you might be shocked to hear that, but these alcoholic beverages all came from plants. That's where they came from, plants that the Creator made for our benefit. And so, yes, there's still some good things in wine because the Creator put good things in grapes, okay? Doesn't mean the wine is good for you. It means the wine is less healthy than the grapes that the Lord gave you, and the fermentation doesn't destroy everything good that the Creator put in the beverage to begin with. Alcohol has profound mental and moral effects. Even think of Jesus' example on the cross. He wouldn't take that fermented drink. Some translations I know translated vinegar. Others translated wine vinegar. It was a fermented drink. Jesus wouldn't touch it even on the cross. Think of the pain that he was having. Why wouldn't he do it? Because he didn't want to cloud his mind. So a lot of evidence against alcohol in the immune system, including its risk on cancer. It's basically just avoided. That's the best strategy. This is what the researchers have said. cancer risk increases with every drink. So even moderate amounts of alcohol, such as a small drink each day, increases the risk of these cancers. Well, let us hasten on, just touch on a couple of other areas. I want to spend just a few minutes with rest, then we'll take your questions. Sleep and immunity, very, very important stuff. We've known about this for many years. Many studies have looked at this. This is a study about 14 years ago now, where they actually had people cut their sleep in half, get 4 hours of sleep instead of 8, dramatically worse immune functioning. And what was really interesting is not only was the immune system less effective, inflammatory compounds were dramatically increased. And some of these things are the very last things that you want to increase if you're fighting an infection or trying to optimize your health. A number of studies showing that you cut yourself short on sleep, you'll increase your risk of viral illnesses like the common cold. So bottom line, you want to get adequate rest, and that's why I was glad tonight that you guys didn't choose a midnight health program for the program. Okay, there are many more things we could talk about. Like I said, we have those things available for you in the free handout. Again, that free handout is available at compasshealth.net/sanctuary. So compasshealth.net/sanctuary, and you can get the free handout. A lot more details than we were able to cover this evening. And you'll also find information in that handout about the free book, but I've also got it here for you, simply compasshealth.net/Ebola, and you can download a free copy of my book, Evading Ebola, where we talk about immune enhancing strategies there as well. Okay, so we have a little bit of time, I think, for some questions at this point. So willing to take those at this time.
So everyone has been muted. So if you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself, and Dr. DeRose can answer your question. Thank you very much. Great information, Dr. DeRose.
Outstanding presentation. I have a question regarding the supplements.
Yes.
What kind do you recommend? Those who are available at any store like Walmart or even Aldi, I saw them with multivitamins vitamins and minerals, or do you have something specific which is probably even better?
Yeah, I mean, I personally recommend that people don't take these multivitamin, multi-mineral supplements. There's one of two problems with them. We discuss this in detail in our book, 30 Days to Natural Blood Pressure Control. But let me make it simple. One thing is you're likely to get some things you don't want. And many people don't realize that one of the things you don't want for an optimal immune system is you don't want to take beta carotene or other vitamin A compounds in a supplement. They're commonly put in there, but if you take these compounds, they upset the natural balance of the vitamin A family, the retinol family in your foods. And they've actually shown in some of the research, for example, an increase in risk of cancer in smokers who were supplementing with beta carotene. So you really don't want necessarily everything they throw in these multivitamin, multi-mineral supplements. The second reason is even if there's something in there that's good, you'd be much better off, and often it's less expensive, you have better control over it, just to take a supplement that you choose. And the ones that I think are especially beneficial for the immune system, we mentioned zinc and vitamin D. Those are two really important ones. I think everyone should be ensuring, especially vitamin D, that they've got adequate amounts. And if you're not eating an abundance of plant products, you may want to consider supplementing with zinc as well. Again, 25 milligrams a day. But the other one that I'm a real fan of is garlic. Of course, you can use the whole garlic, and that has an added benefit. You don't have to social distance. People will normally just run away from you if you eat enough garlic. Of course, that's a bit tongue-in-cheek there for you, but the point is garlic is very, very good for the immune system. And there's a number of research studies that have looked at garlic and its immune enhancing and antimicrobial properties. So I'm a real fan of garlic. I know a lot of people have been emphasizing other supplements, but it's not so much trying to take so many supplements. It's really getting on a healthy lifestyle. And that's what we've tried to emphasize in that handout. Get the adequate rest, the stress management, the sleep, cultivate the spiritual values of gratitude, thanksgiving, giving back. These things are really powerful. And if you're doing these things, it's unlikely you're going to need a whole, grocery cart full of different supplements.
Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful.
I have a question from a young lady whose mother is she's elderly and in a rehab facility. She wants to know, should her mother get the COVID vaccine or should she decline it? Can you give us any kind of insight on that decision?
I'll tell you, it's an interesting question. There are so many people asking me about the COVID vaccine.
Yes.
And the first thing I tell them, there is no such thing. There is no the COVID vaccine. There are many vaccines that are being studied. There's one that's been released to my knowledge. It has the emergency authorization. That's the Pfizer vaccine that's now shipping and being administered. So we can talk about that one first, but there's multiple vaccines in the pipelines. Some of you have heard of the company Moderna that has a vaccine that's similar in structure and how it functions to the Pfizer vaccine. There's a AstraZeneca vaccine that's quite different. That's in the pipeline as well. There's, I think it's called Novavax, if I've got the company right. They're working on a more conventional coronavirus vaccine. So let me answer the question this way. If this person in a nursing home is offered the Pfizer vaccine that's available currently, my best take right now for someone in a nursing home, there's a lot of questions about this. The vaccine, it's a totally new strategy for vaccines. We've not used it. It uses something called messenger RNA. A lot of us in medical circles have questions, the long-term potential risks, downsides, long-term benefits. But just having had a mother-in-law who died in a nursing home because she did not have a vaccine, we wouldn't have hesitated, my wife and I, to have had her mother get the vaccines. There's very high risk of the nursing home where my mother-in-law was, like 3/4 of the people there had an outbreak of COVID got it. Many of them died. So for high-risk people, I'm not really worried about a side effect 10 years down the road. A lot of these people have a relatively short lifespan and they could die if COVID gets into that nursing home. So I think from what I'm seeing right now, the risk benefit for those very high risk individuals, I would probably err on the side of this current vaccine, the messenger RNA vaccines, of using them. That's and again, there's a lot of questions still. I'm not making that a recommendation for everyone, but if someone has a relatively short lifespan, likely ahead of them, they're at very high risk, I think it might be prudent in those situations. And I think that is a group worth prioritizing for the vaccine.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
I don't know.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
I don't know what to take from that.
Okay, no, I'm glad Pastor Ovid is having some concerns about that. Really, I mean,
it's hard.
You see, here's the thing.
It's a hard question to answer.
Well,
Yes.
but I appreciate you wanting to dwell on it a little longer because all of us, presumably all of us here today, are not in a nursing home. We're not in the closing days of our lives, and it makes it a much more difficult question. I mean,
the media is pushing for. Everybody's talking about vaccines and who is going to get first, where is going to, everybody, and the nurses and the doctors, they are getting first, and who is, and people are talking about, and of course, it's another subculture of anti-vaccines in Seventh-day Adventist Church. So in some places, so we are confused. We are confused.
Let me read you something since we're on this topic. If you want to do some really interesting reading, get a little book called Second Selected Messages, and read around page 300 in that book, and you're going to find many interesting things about many health approaches that you might be surprised were addressed in that context, okay? It'll talk about different therapies, but I'm going to second selected messages, page 303, and I want to read you something.
Mm-hmm.
So someone had written a letter. So many of you may realize second selected messages is a collection of material that was written by Ellen White. And many people believe that Ellen White was given special guidance by God, not only on spiritual matters, but on health matters. I'll tell you, as a young man, I thought that was a bunch of nonsense. I didn't want to read anything from some woman telling me about how to read the Bible. But when I started looking at what this woman had written, I came to the conclusion that she had to be inspired by God. And as a physician, I've come to the conclusion that when you read her stuff, there's absolutely no explanation other than that God directed her and what she wrote. So they wrote to those, after Ellen White had passed away, they wrote about, did she talk about vaccination? So here's the question. You asked for definite and concise information regarding what Sister White wrote about vaccination and serum. This question could be answered very briefly, for so far as we have any record, she did not refer to them in any of her writings. But you will be interested to know, however, that at a time there was an epidemic of smallpox in the vicinity, she herself was vaccinated, and she urged her helpers, those connected with her, to be vaccinated. Now, the author of this actually was D.E. Robinson, and if I'm remembering correctly, he actually had married Ellen White's granddaughter. So he kind of married into the family. He was also a pastor and church leader. But he makes this comment, and you could debate this because this is his conclusion, but he says, in taking this step, Sister White recognized the fact that it has been proven that vaccination either renders one immune from smallpox or greatly lightens its effects if one does come down with it. She also recognized the danger of their exposing others if they fail to take this precaution. So we can't actually say necessarily, I mean, he's conjecturing what Ellen White was thinking. But the point is simply this. Let's just talk about this COVID-19, Pfizer vaccine. Well, they're injecting a delivery device to give you messenger RNA. Now, a lot of people, and I hear about this. This sounds, pretty worrisome to me as a physician. But, as you think about it, if you understand what happens, if you get infected with a virus, it's injecting genetic material into your system. So old style vaccines, that's what we do, like the smallpox vaccine. It would be an attenuated vaccine, be an attenuated virus. So it'd be a weakened virus. They inject it into your system, and your body, it's really injecting, RNA, DNA, whatever that type of virus is. There's RNA viruses and DNA viruses. It's injecting that in your system, and your body's making an immune response. I'm not saying it's equivalent. If you're a health professional, you may say, well, I'm explaining this kind of sloppily. Well, I'm trying to make a general point. The point is simply this, that these vaccines, although I have concerns about them because they've never used this type of vaccine approach before. So we have some concerns about them. And I think the concerns are legitimate. And I don't think everyone should be just jumping on the bandwagon and saying this is, God's great gift to humanity. I'm not saying that God didn't lead in this and isn't going to, spare people of illness from it. But I am saying if you're a young person, if you're healthy, if you think you're at low risk to COVID-19, well, you're not going to get the vaccine anytime soon anyway. Okay, they're not going to give it to you. And, let's wait and see how this pans out. If you're in a nursing home, like I said, the best light I have on it from looking at this point is some of these people, the risk seems to be less than the risk of just being exposed to the virus and having severe complications in those settings. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just telling you that's kind of my take on it right now.
Not anti-vaccination, anti-vaccines in general, but specific the COVID-19, that it's
Well, yeah. So here's the thing, and I think that second selected message statement is interesting because I don't think it's rational to be against all vaccines because if you look at it, really, I've seen patients with we've seen it as physicians with severe vaccine preventable conditions. Some of these things, like a tetanus vaccine. I mean, there's people who die from tetanus. It's totally preventable. And by the way, once you have tetanus, you can't take a shot for it. Okay. Rabies, terrible disease. I mean, it's terrible, but it's preventable with vaccination. Now, we don't go around vaccinating everyone for rabies, but I'll tell you, I had a child that was bitten by a wild animal. You better believe that, we made sure they got a rabies vaccination because so the point is to blanket all this under one umbrella, but you're exactly right. If someone's not at risk for something, then every vaccine has side effects. You're injecting something into. There's the potential for side effects. I'm not going to tell you there's any vaccine that's totally safe. And so, yes. So you can listen to people say, well, vaccines are all bad. Other people say they're all good. The truth is somewhere in between. Use it judiciously. If you're at risk, if you're a high risk situation, you're a veterinarian, you better have rabies vaccination because you don't want to get rabies and die. I mean, once you get it, they can't give you the vaccine and prevent it. You're going to die.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. Any more questions? We had a question, but Pastor, I think you took care of it. There was a concern about garlic. When you take it and it upsets your stomach, is there a remedy for that?
Well, there are the deodorized garlic preparations, and often if you take them with a meal, that's what we would recommend doing. It is true. There are some helpful herbs that are somewhat irritating to the stomach for some people. Garlic's one of them. Another is turmeric. Turmeric does seem to have some immune enhancing effects. It's also good for pain. It's a natural pain reliever. And it may even help decrease the risk of dementia. So this is one of our favorite herbs, turmeric, the yellow-orange Asian herb. So yes, that's another one, but I can't take it on an empty stomach. That bothers my stomach a bit. But if I take it with a meal, I do fine with it. So yeah, so there's some of those things that, just being prudent with when you take them, how you take them, and usually taking things with a meal, if it bothers your stomach, will help address that problem.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, Dr. DeRose, you did an excellent job. Thank you so much. I don't think there are any additional questions. Thank you for the handout. Hey, well, it's great to have you with us. We want to thank everyone who joined us, those who are on Zoom with us, those on Facebook, and also we have some on YouTube. So we want to thank you for being there. We'll continue this discussion. I mean, this isn't over. We want to continue helping people improve their health. And so this is something that we do every third Monday. We did it the second Monday this month because, the holiday next week. But we'll be back at this next month, January 18th. We have a special guest next month. Her name is Darla Sherman. She's a speaker and a private coach. She teaches health. And our focus is going to be about taking charge of your health. I mean, right after New Year's, what do? We start resolutions that often fail within about 2.5 weeks after. So we're going to take charge of our health. So you're welcome to come back and join us if you're not busy. Dr. DeRose and all of you, please stay on the lookout for our upcoming programs. We'd love to have you.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
DeRose.
Good night, all.
All right.
Very
Thank you so much.
informative.
All right.
Bye.
We'll
All right,
promote
have a
the
good
books. We'll try to promote the books here.
Okay.
We bring them to church next time.
Oh, okay, very good. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.